Hi, this is Sarah Lingra with pianokeyfinders.com, and this video is to explain the dominant seventh chord. Now, in my lessons, explaining the dominant seventh chord with my students completely makes sense when they're here. And you can see their eyes get shiny because they get it. And then I'm pretty sure, especially in the beginning, that when they get home, they're like, I have no idea what she was talking about, but I know I had an idea when I was in the lesson. So this video here is for all of you who are my students and anybody else who's curious about the dominant seventh chord so that you can hear the lesson about the dominant seventh chords often enough so that it finally sinks in. And if you feel like it hasn't sunken in, watch the video a few more times, play around with it, use the chord cards and get it in your head. And I guarantee probably after 2 or 3 months, you'll be like, oh, wait a minute, it's starting to make sense. If you find this confusing in the beginning, that is so normal. So don't worry if the terminology is crazy and you're not understanding it yet. You will understand it eventually. So what I have here in front of you is a 2-octave major scale. The major scale is the white key pattern based on going from C to C on a piano keyboard. The white key pattern skips a black key here, 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 and here. And this is a 2-octave scale, so you're missing these groups of 2 and 3 black keys. When you go from C to D, that's a whole step because we're skipping a half a step here. D to E, whole step. E to F is a half step. You can see that there's no key in between. And then it's whole, whole, half, whole. Now, the numbers here on top, the Arabic numerals, are scale degrees, 1 through 7, or in this case, 1 through 8, because 8 is sometimes used interchangeably with a 1. And then underneath here in the arrows are Roman numerals. And Roman numerals are used in music to explain the differences between major and minor chords. So here, it's an uppercase because the chord associated with the first note of the scale is a major chord. The 2 over here is a lowercase 2 because when you play the second note of the scale, skipping every other key, you get a D minor chord. This one right here is lowercase because the third note of the scale, when we're doing the major scale, is minor as well. Over here on the 4, it's uppercase because it is a major chord. G major is uppercase because it's a major. A minor, lowercase. Then the 7th note is actually diminished. You can see that between this key and this key, we're skipping 2 keys, and this key, we're skipping 2 keys. So those are 2 minor thirds on top of each other, and they make a diminished chord rather than a major or minor. So these chords right here are what is called diatonic triads. Triads are 3-note chords built on thirds, and the diatonic business means that they are based on the notes of the scale. So you have a C chord in the key of C, a C chord, a D chord, E, F, G, A, B, and then of course the C again. When we're talking about seventh chords are 4-note chords that skip every other key. The root of the chord is the one that's the lowest. So here, C major, 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G7. This is the dominant chord, and that's what I'm going to be coming back to. There will be other videos about the other types of chords like the minor 7 or the minor 7 flat 5, A minor 7, and then this one right here is a B minor 7 flat 5. Again, that's for another video. Okay, so when we're talking about notes of the scale, the notes are given scale degree names in addition to the numbers. The first note of a scale is called a tonic. And we're only going to focus on the tonic, the dominant, and the subdominant for this video. So the tonic is the first, the subdominant is the fourth, and the dominant is the fifth. When we're going around the circle of fifths, we're moving, if we have a C, if we're going in the clockwise direction, we're going to the dominant, and if we're going in the counterclockwise direction, we're going to the subdominant. So often people refer to the circle of fifths as the circle of fifths and fourths. But we are focusing today on the dominant. So in the key of C, the dominant is the G. When I make a seventh chord on the dominant, it's the 1, 3, 5, 7 in the key of the tonic. So if G is the dominant in this key, the tonic is C. The G7 chord and dominant seventh chords will have the letter name and the number 7. There won't be an MA or an MI or a plus or a minus. There could be some numbers afterwards, but we're going with the basic seventh chord, so we're not going to worry about extensions and modifications in this video. So when you see a G7 or a D7 or an F7, that tells you that that's a dominant seventh chord. The reason I'm using C as an example is because C major has no sharps and flats. So the only notes that I can use to build the chord are the ones that are part of the scale that I'm playing in, or the key that I'm playing in. So in the case of C major, I can only use white keys. If I were playing in the key of G major, I'm going to move the yellow arrow to a G over here. G major, G major has an F sharp. So if I'm doing a seventh chord and I'm starting on G in the key of G major, a G major 7 is G, B, D, F sharp. But the problem here is that the seventh chord, when I'm in the key of C, cannot have an F sharp because there's no F sharp in the key. So here I go, it's G, B, D, F. The reason that it's called a dominant seventh chord is it's a seventh chord built on the dominant note of whatever your tonic key is. So the seventh chord in this case is G, B, D, F when I'm in the key of C. So if you see a G7, then think I'm in the key of C. If I'm going to be playing in the key of F sharp, so here's my F sharp. The fifth note of the F sharp is C sharp. So if I'm going to do a seventh chord in F sharp, C sharp, E sharp, G sharp, B. That is the dominant seventh. So this would be a C sharp 7 in the key of F sharp. If I was in C sharp, the chord would be C sharp, E sharp, G sharp, and B sharp, because B sharp is part of the key of C sharp, but it's not part of the key of F sharp. So remember, when you see a dominant seventh chord, the dominant tells you the key that you're in because it's the fifth note of whatever key you're playing. And that the difference between the dominant seventh and the major seventh is that the dominant seventh is a major seventh chord with a flat 7. And let me just explain that a little bit here as well. If I am playing C, okay, so C, that's a major seventh chord. If I wanted to play a C7 chord rather than a C major 7, it has a flat 7. Now, thinking about this, C is the dominant note of what key? So if I wanted to figure that out, I could slide the 5, because 5 is the dominant note, over to C. So here's my 5 on C and F. So the C chord in the key of F is C, E, G, B flat, because those are the notes of the 7th chord when I'm in the key of F. I know this is confusing, and I'm trying to make it as clean and understandable as possible. I think the more you listen to this and the more you play around with it, it's going to make a little bit more sense. And then as you play more pieces, you're going to notice how the dominant chord resolves itself to the tonic of whatever key you're in. Understanding scale degrees and knowing how to make them sharp and flat is really helpful because it makes it a lot easier to derive chords. So one last little thing here, which is probably a little bit of overkill, but you can always stop the video if you need to, is if I'm playing a major 7th, 1, 3, 5, 7. If I'm doing a dominant 7th, 1, 3, 5, flat 7. If I'm doing a minor 7, 1, flat 3, 5, flat 7. If I'm doing a minor 7, flat 5, or half diminished chord, 1, 3, flat 5, flat 7. And you can see that the 3, 5, and 7 are one key to the left of the 3, 5, and 7. If I'm doing a diminished 7th, it's 1, flat 3, flat 5, double flatted 7, which is here. All of those are minor thirds apart. If I am doing a major 6 chord, it's 1, 3, 5, 6. And to make that major 6 chord a minor 6, 1, flat 3, 5, 6. So that's a little bit, there are videos on this YouTube channel that explain each one of these 7th chords, or the 4-note chords, more in depth, but this is giving you an idea of why it's useful to understand scale degrees and to be able to derive your chords. So this is Sarah Lingra with pianokeyfinders.com. You can find this 2-octave scale card and lots of other ones with chord combinations at pianokeyfinders.com. And thank you for your time.